Hi, my name is Spencer Hilgenfeld, and I'm the owner here at American Tactical Arms. I wanted to create this video today to show you some of our products and teach you about the compatibility and versatility of our Glock slides. When it comes to Glock slide manufacturers, there are tons of different ones out there. Each have their own unique, individualized design. So you may be wondering, how's American Tactical Arms any different? Back in 2020, when I started this company, there are two main points that we were focusing on. One, we wanted to create a design that was both practical and could be used for everyday use. And secondly, we wanted to create the first ever design of Glock 19 and 17 slide that was compatible with all generation of Glock 19 frames and all generation of Glock 17 frames. I found it very frustrating that the user would have to purchase generation specific Glock slides, which became very costly very fast. Having said that, our Badger design was born. Let's start with our ATA-19 Badger slide. At first glance, the ATA-19 Badger slide may look like any other Generation 3 Glock 19 slide. You would even assemble it no differently than you would any other Generation 3 slide. You take your Gen 3 parts kit, you'd insert all the parts, you would take any Glock 19 generation barrel of your choosing, you put it in, you'd insert your Generation 3 guide rod, and just like that, your slide is complete. And you take your Generation 3 frame. Today we're using a Palmetto State Armory Dagger frame to represent our Generation 3 frame. They're the exact same design, so they would function and fit the exact same way. You would slide your unit on, and the fit and function would be no different than it would on any other Generation 3 slide. So now, if we remove this, you may be wondering, well, how does it work on a Generation 4? I don't have a Generation 4 frame in front of me, but you would just simply take the unit and you'd slide it on no differently than you would on the Generation 3, and the fit and the function would be the exact same. However, there is one key difference, and that is that the Generation 4 slide, similar to this Generation 5, has a wider front gap than it does on the Generation 3. Having said that, when you insert the slide on there will be a little bit of a gap, but you can fill that gap with a Strike Industries adapter plate. This adapter plate is not necessary for fit or function of the unit. It's just purely there for aesthetic purposes only. So you may be wondering, okay, so it works for the Gen 3, it'll work with the Gen 4. I just could use the adapter plate or not use the adapter plate, but how do we get it to work on the Generation 5? So there's one thing that you have to do differently. You just have to swap out your back plate. You would take your Generation 3 back plate off, and you put your Generation 5 backplate on. This one actually is already a Generation 5 backplate. So as you can see, when using the Generation 5 backplate, the unit works on the Gen 3 frame, it would work on the Gen 4 frame, and in this case, a Generation 5 frame. Now this is a Glock 45 frame. It's no different than it is on a Glock 19X or Generation 5 19. The only difference is the actual handle is longer, similar to a Glock 17. So we would take our unit with our Generation 5 backplate and Generation 3 parts kit, and we would just slide it right on there, and the fit and function is the exact same as it was on our Generation 3 frame. Now you can see that that little gap is there. So if that bothers you, you can simply remove the unit. You can take your guide rod out, and you can insert your Strike Industries adapter plate. Put your guide rod back in there, and then slide it right back onto your Generation 5 frame. And now that gap is sealed, and it is complete, and the fit and the function is no different. So again, we can take this unit off. We could take this adapter plate off. We could put our Gen 3 guide rod in, and the unit is simply now just going to operate like it should on the Gen 3. And it can go right off. And we can put it on our Generation 5, Glock 45, or 19X frame. Slide it on. And there it is. The fit and function is absolutely no different. So that's for our 19 Badger slide. So now let's move on to our Glock 17. The ATA 17 design is very similar to the 19 design. This one is specific for our Glock 17 frames. Now, to assemble this on a Generation 3 frame, we would just take our unit, we would put our typical Generation 3 parts inside of here. Again, this one already has the Generation 5 backplate on it. If you want it just for Generation 3 or 4, you could use the Generation 3 or 4 backplate. If you want it for all generations, you'd have to use the Generation 5 backplate. So we already installed the backplate here. So you're going to take your Generation 3 barrel, you're going to take your guide rod, and you're going to install it on your Generation 3 Glock 17 frame no differently than you would any other Generation 3 slide. So the fit and function is perfect. Now, you may be wondering, well, how do we get this to operate on our Generation 5? So, there is a difference between the generations of 17s versus 19s. So, on the Gen 5 17, the actual locking lugs on the Gen 5 are different than the locking lugs on the Generation 3 barrels. So if you want to use the slide on your Generation 5 frame, you have to use a Generation 5 specific barrel. With the 19s, you can use any barrel you want. But for the 17s, you have to make sure that the barrel matches the generation of frame that you're trying to put your unit on. So we'll now put our Generation 5 barrel inside the unit. And then we're going to go to put our guide rod in there. But you'll notice that the guide rod can't actually fit snugly in there because the locking lugs are in a different location. So we created our own patent pending device that acts as a spacer that you would put on here just like you would with the Strike Industries adapter, and it would actually add volume to the slide so you can take your Generation 3 guide rod and you can place it in here with your Generation 5 barrel. And with doing that, we now have our Generation 5 barrel, we have our Generation 5 backplate, and we have our patent pending spacer device installed. This unit can now operate on a Glock 17 Generation 5 frame. You slide it on, and the fit and function is no different than it was on the Generation 3. Since we're using our patent pending spacer, we already went ahead and filled that space for you, so you don't have to worry about using any adapter plates. So let's go over that again. So if we take this unit off, and we want to use it on our Generation 3, we would have to remove the guide rod, remove the spacer, remove the Generation 5 barrel, and place our Generation 3 barrel, and place our guide rod back in. And now this unit will work on our Gen 3 again. We can remove it. We'll take out our guide rod again. We'll take out our Generation 3 barrel. We'll insert our Generation 5 barrel. We will insert our spacer. And then we'll put our Generation 3 guide rod back in. And now we'll take our Generation 5 frame and we will just put the unit on. And the fit and function is the exact same as it was on Generation 3. So let's summarize that one more time. So with our 19 Badger slide, we will install our Generation 3 parts kit and we will use a Generation 5 backplate. By using that, we can use any of the generation barrels that we want. We just use our Gen 3 guide rod and the unit will function on our Generation 3s. It will also function on our Generation 4s, and then it will also function on our Generation 5s. So the 19 is a little bit more simpler. It's as simple as just taking it off your Gen 3, putting it on your Gen 4, and putting it on your Gen 5. If you want to take the extra step and use the Strike Industries spacer, you may, but it is not necessary for function. So again, it's our 19 Badger slide, Gen 3 parts kit, Gen 5 backplate, and any generation of barrel that you wish to use. Moving on to our 17, we would just take our generation specific barrel. So in this case, if we want the Gen 3 frame, we would use a Gen 3 barrel. We would use our Gen 3 guide rod. And again, the slide is just using all Generation 3 parts. The only difference is that we're using the Gen 5 backplate, the same as with the 19. We can then take that and we can slide it on here. And the fit and function is there. Likewise, if we want to now use this on our Generation 5 frame, we would have to remove the guide rod, we'd have to remove the barrel, and use our Generation 5 specific barrel. Insert that. We'd have to use the patent pending spacer that we developed so that your Generation 3 guide rod can now fit. And now, just like that, our unit will operate on our Generation 5 Glock 17 frame. So again, how are we different? We make the only slide on the market that's compatible with all generation of Glock 19 and 17 frame. Yes, there are a few little steps in between there to get it to work on the different frames, but it allows the end user to use one slide for all generation, so you only have to purchase one if you so choose. It's similar to the upper receiver of an AR-15. You can simply take off your 5.56, put on a 300 Blackout or 6.5 Grendel. It is no different than that. It is a simple, robust system that we stand behind here with a lifetime warranty. So if you have any questions at all about the compatibility of our slides, please don't hesitate to email or call us, and we'd be more than happy to walk you through this process. Thank you guys again for everything. We really appreciate your support. Once again, I'm Spencer, and I hope to see more of your Badger builds in the near future.